Sarinde pedingi chate number dinashi thand Canada gi thuzo thumi pedesha ngaraste ranzen thapsuba kono jeba tha chizo nalo news ma thuen che chale nange atinashi ranzen pas che thari geji phu ranzen so che thing dumbadi Canada Toronto la so thubdi one ngi sambala lugyu de demba chita dinashi Canada gi lumbadi thakbar do dinang lo ne ngara zo phimi ne de shunge solia siji dembe gi logyo nang lo ne ji gi khashwar chodo ji la so so ngi no ji shugyo en tendele ya ngi su chai shuma ga chong chi shue yi de thari de ma de ge she de inge na la ro she sa de inge na shu cho chi. My greetings and tashitela to the honored guests of the 7th International Council Conference held in Toronto, Canada. Honorable MP Brad Radical, MP of House of Commons, my honorable colleagues of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, representatives of various organizations, senior Ranzenpa, Ranzen aspirers, Ranzen activists, and everyone who have come here today. It's certainly a very momentous occasion in our Tibetan freedom movement today, which will be acknowledged in the future course of Tibetan freedom movement. Let me declare and reiterate to Xi Clique and every free nation around the world that Tibet was an independent sovereign nation that was militarily annexed by Chinese Red Armies and remains under PRC's occupation today. No amount of propaganda or disinformation by Chinese Communist Party or PRC clique can ever dissect the true history, nor can we proceed on to challenge the dissemination of CCP disinformation by carrying the flag of the CCP disinformation itself. The forceful annexation of the sovereign Tibet by the so-called People's Liberation Army of China led to genocide of more than 1 million Tibetans, a number which continues to rise under its occupation. Till this day, Chinese leadership tries to legitimize its occupation by manipulating the history of Tibet by claiming that Tibet has been part of China since time immemorial. No nation has the right to certify such a fabrication and change the truth for its own personal momentary reward. Amongst all the outlandish false claim of Xi Clique, the most widely owned narrative or disinformation is its quote of how Tibet was part of China during Yuan and Qing dynasty. While the Yuan dynasty is the Mongolian ruler of China in the 13th century, the Qing dynasty is the Manchu ruler of China in the 17th century, which extended its control over major areas in Asia, including Tibet and China itself. Tibet was declared independent from both these rulers during both the regimes, despite its extended control initially. But interestingly enough, both these dynasties, who weren't clearly Han Chinese, ruled today's mainland China until the next dynasty. So it's like a hypothetical scenario where Australian government claims New Zealand is part of Australian territory simply on the ground argument of how Britishers ruled over New Zealand, but concealing the fact that it too was under its colonial empire. Despite China's promise of granting freedom of religion and equality to Tibetans during the 17th Peace Point Agreement on May 23, 1951, which was made under duress and which our then spiritual and political leader, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, repudiated, hence invalid under the international law. In these more than 70 years, not only was His Holiness forced to leave his fatherland under dire circumstances with a small section of the community in exile, today almost 4 generations of Tibetans have suffered under the Chinese dictatorial colonial empire. Chinese leadership has been attempting to completely wash off Tibetan history and identity under different Chinese communist leadership, and now it has become even more intolerant and systematically militarized under Xi Jinping. Not just Tibetans as the people, but Tibetan natural resources and lands are exploited at a speeding rate to boost China's economy, which of course facilitates China's expansionist ambition over not just the occupied territories of Tibet, but East Turkestan and southern Mongolia. We've seen the growing ambition of Chinese invasionist ambition through its attempt in Indo-Pacific regions like the Indo-Tibet border against India and Taiwan Strait. Despite what China or the world claim, what we as Tibetans must remember is we as Tibetans have the right to self-determination. We have the right to sovereign independence on the basis of our rightful history. Ongoing persecution, suppression of Tibetans, not just in occupied Tibet, but the transnational repression, finally, for the future generation of Tibet. The deep suffering that our forefathers endured and challenged in the past and the continued resistance of our Tibetan sisters and brothers in occupied Tibet continue to fight in various ways cannot go in waste. The escalating political oppression and violence, the rigorous policy of cultural and religious suppression, the vivid social and economic discrimination, deliberate environmental destruction, and not to mention Xi's carefully catered, long-standing disinformation campaign in this digital time is a solid reminder of our Tibet advocacy roadmap towards a free and democratic Tibet. Our momentary comfort, personal security, and ambition today should not hamper our ingrained courage, resilience, grit, camaraderie, fraternity, and dedication to our people possessed by our warrior ancestors. The terms like Zembe Nyingdop and Kanjempa are beyond some poetic lines. This is who we are as Tibetans. We can only serve the humanity by being self-reliant and powerful as a community and as Tibetans. In the coming few days, we will sit together as Tibetans, as Rangzhenpa, and evaluate our past, our present, and together create our Rangzhen roadmap. It's not about whether you are Huzang, Khamba, Amdo, whether you are a woman or man, whether you are young, old, Chidu, whether you are a Rangzhen activist, whether you are a Rangzhen aspirer, whether you belong to a Rangzhen organization or not. We should come together in these coming 3 days as Rangzhenpa, as Tibetans, as Kanjempa, as fellow comrades. Our foremost vision of going back to an independent Tibet, seeing His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama in Potala Palace, practicing democracy on the soil of our Paiute Tibet, Tibet of flourishing culture and prosperity should be engraved in our hearts till we achieve that vision, that dream. I thank you again for having me and my colleagues here today. I thank our honored guests, true friend of Tibet. To wrap up with a good news, I want to announce that the Court of the Citizen of the World today has found sufficient legal ground to indict and arrest dictator Xi Jinping of China. I've been honored to virtually give my expert witness evidence testimony along with Temba Thagila, former political prisoner who has come from Australia. All I want to say is such an event, such an indictment by the Court of the Citizen of the World may not lead to the actual arrest of Xi Jinping, but it's a clear declaration that he is, as we always chant during our protests, that he is a murderer, that he is behind all the genocides taking place, he is behind the, destruction of the future of Tibetan identity as well. So I think this kind of announcement is very important, and I am very honored to be part of such a campaign. And I also want to let you know that it has happened today on the day when we begin our 7th International Rangzhen Conference. So I request you all, when I wrap this up, to come together in thanking the 7th International Rangzhen Conference's organizing committee. I see the entire team here, Losanla and everyone who's been part of the 7th International Rangzhen Conference. We have been part of so many of the International Rangzhen Conference, and it's certainly not easy when you're behind organizing such an important event. So I want to thank you all, and if I may request all of you to offer your round of applause for the organizing committee of the International Rangzhen Conference. Tuchana, all I want to say is let's just not forget who we are. Let's never forget who we are. We are Tibetans, we are Khanjempa, and Sembe Nyingdop is something that we've always had, we do have, and we should not allow any form of differences that we have, where we are from, whether we are Uzang, Khamba, Amdo, doesn't matter. Which Chulu you belong to doesn't matter. Just remember that we represent Tibetans inside Tibet. And if we actually do represent them, we ought to speak for them. So I want to request you that in coming 3 days, we will be deciding on the future roadmap of Tibet, future roadmap of Ramzan activism in exile. So please do participate. I hope that we'll have more involvement from the Tibetan people of Canada in coming days. So do encourage your friends, do encourage your fellow Tibetans to participate in Ramzan conference. So lovely having you all here. Thank you so much for having me.
Lajar namja dongala tuche ane degi jesu pumama chimtu geshi molam tachi lani sonshi nangju